The silence after paying off their $70,000 debt was broken by their mockery, a betrayal that stung more than I could have imagined. In response, I reclaimed the secret gift I had been holding onto for so long. What followed left them completely speechless. Dad, Vanessa, 28, Colton, 26, Rachel, 22, and even Grandma, who seemed to have aged a decade since I'd last seen her, were all gathered. It had begun on what I'd anticipated being an ordinary Thursday evening. I had barely slipped off my shoes, heated up some leftover lasagna, and settled in when my phone began to vibrate. I glanced down and saw Mom's name. She's not one for casual chats. Her calls are usually reserved for crises, like when the cable malfunctions or she can't remember her email password. Seeing her name was definitely out of the ordinary. When I answered, the first thing I heard was her crying. "Elliot, we need you," she choked out, sounding as though she had been weeping for hours. "Please, can you come over right now?" I didn't pause to ask questions. A sense of foreboding washed over me. I grabbed my jacket, slipped on some sneakers, and rushed out the door. My heart raced throughout the drive, my mind conjuring up every possible scenario that could cause Mom, of all people, to cry. When I arrived, a heavy atmosphere enveloped the house. That's the only way I can describe it. The living room, where we spent our childhood watching movies and bickering over snacks, now felt claustrophobic. Dad sat on the couch, visibly distressed, staring at the carpet as if it held all the answers. Vanessa was pacing, gnawing at her nails. Colton was slumped in the recliner, avoiding my gaze, and Rachel was huddled in the corner with her arms crossed. Grandma, always my source of strength, was hunched over in her chair, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. "Elliot, sit down," Dad said, his voice weary. I knew from his tone that whatever it was serious. It turned out the family was drowning in debt, the kind that keeps you up at night. Every credit card maxed out, the mortgage overdue for months, and they were barely hanging on. They had been trying to keep things together, but everything had spiraled beyond their control. As if that wasn't bad enough, Vanessa had secretly taken out a personal loan to cover some emergency expenses. I glanced at her. She looked ashamed. What those expenses were remained a mystery at the time. Collectors were constantly calling and sending letters, and now the bank had sent them a foreclosure notice. The house we grew up in, filled with our memories, was on the verge of being lost. Their world was crumbling, and they were running out of time to save it. It was a lot to take in. I sat there listening as they explained how they tried everything. Selling possessions, cutting expenses, even asking relatives for help, but nothing had worked. "We've done all we can," Dad said, his voice breaking. "I hate to say that, but we don't know what to do." There was a long silence where everyone looked at me. I'm not sure why, but I felt the weight of the entire situation settle on my shoulders. The truth is, I had been saving for years. I had worked tirelessly at a stable job and accumulated a significant amount of money. I had intended to use it for something transformative, but I had always kept it a secret. Seeing my family in such a state, fractured and losing hope, I didn't hesitate. "I can help. Don't worry," I blurted out. In the days that followed, I dedicated myself to untangling the mess they were in. It meant drawing $70,000 from my savings, a huge blow to my own financial security, but I convinced myself it was the right thing to do. I started by tackling the most pressing debts, credit cards, unpaid utilities, anything to silence the constant phone calls and threatening letters. I even scheduled a meeting with the bank to renegotiate their mortgage, desperate to keep them from losing the house they'd worked so hard for. Vanessa's personal loan was particularly difficult to manage, but I covered it too, just to get the debt collectors to leave her alone. When it was all said and done, things were stable, at least for the time being. My family wasn't entirely in the clear, but the immediate threat was gone, and they had some breathing room. Their reaction alone made it worth every penny, every stressful moment. Dad pulled me into a tight hug, something he rarely does. "You're a hero, kiddo," he said, sounding genuinely proud. For once, I felt like I truly mattered to them. Mom cried, but these were tears of relief and happiness. Even Vanessa, normally too proud to ask for help, managed a "Thank you. I don't know how I can ever repay you." It was the first time in what felt like forever that I felt truly appreciated. Like I wasn't just the quiet, background figure in the family. I allowed myself to believe that this moment would last, that it could be a turning point for all of us. But, looking back, I couldn't have been more wrong. Initially, things seemed wonderful, even better than I expected. I felt like I'd actually made a real, tangible difference. Whenever I visited, the suffocating tension that had been hanging over everyone seemed to have lifted. Dad was back to his tinkering in the garage, lost in his projects. Mom wasn't constantly glued to the couch, worrying about bills. And even Vanessa seemed to smile more freely. It was a genuinely nice change, but the warmth didn't last. After a few short weeks, the atmosphere started to cool. My visits felt shorter somehow. Texts from my family became less frequent, and the genuine gratitude that I initially felt seemed to fade away slowly. I tried not to dwell on it. People move on, don't they? They were just busy putting their lives back together. At least that's what I kept telling myself. But what really sustained me through this period was the surprise I'd been planning for years. You see, even before all the debt issues arose, I had a dream to buy my parents a new car. Not some luxurious, over-the-top sports car, just something practical, reliable, and still a little bit fancy. Their old sedan, a clunky, gray thing that groaned with every start, had been on its last legs for years. It was a running joke in our family. Dad affectionately called it Old Betsy, but Betsy wasn't really running. She was limping along. Duct tape held the side mirror together, and the windows only rolled down if you hit the buttons in just the right way. I couldn't even count the times it broke down in the middle of nowhere. So, I'd been diligently saving for a replacement. It wasn't just about the car itself. It was about giving them something they didn't have to worry about, a way to say, "You've done so much for us. Now, let me do something for you." After resolving the debt situation, it felt like the perfect time to act on my plan. I dove into research, determined to find the perfect vehicle. What kind of car would work best for them? I needed something spacious enough for family trips, but modern enough to make them feel proud when driving it. After what felt like an eternity of saving and researching, I finally settled on a crossover SUV. It was loaded every feature I knew they'd secretly covet. A crystal-clear backup camera, the luxury of heated seats for those frosty mornings, all the bells and whistles. Silver, sleek, and smelling of that intoxicating new car scent. The day I signed the papers, a giddy thrill coursed through me. I'd poured so much sweat and effort into this, and the image of their faces, Mom's, Dad's, even Vanessa and Colton's, fueled me. My plan was meticulous. I'd drive it to their place, park a block away to maintain the suspense, and unveil it after dinner. I'd played the scene out in my head countless times. Mom's happy tears, Dad's grin widening until it reached his eyes, and maybe, just maybe, a sliver of genuine appreciation from Vanessa and Colton for once. Before I hit the road, a quick call felt necessary, just to confirm everyone was actually home. Mom answered on the third ring, her voice a little distant. "Hey, Mom, are you guys going to be around tonight?" I asked, carefully masking my bubbling excitement. Yeah, I think so. Why? What's going on?" she replied, her attention seemingly elsewhere. "Just thought I'd pop over, hang out for a bit," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Okay, see you later then," she said, hanging up with an abrupt click. "No, how are you?" No questions about my day, just nothing. A tiny red flag flickered in my mind, but I quickly dismissed it. She was probably just preoccupied. The drive itself was almost surreal. I'd had the car detailed. It gleamed, the silver paint practically liquid under the streetlights. At every stoplight, I caught glimpses of envious glances, and a little smugness crept in. This was a big deal. More than just a car, it was a tangible representation of every late night, every sacrifice, everything I'd overcome to reach this point. As I approached their house, I slowed down, scanning for any telltale peeking faces in the windows. I found a spot just down the street, far enough to keep the surprise intact but close enough for a dramatic reveal later. Walking up to the front door, I felt like I was 10 years old again, buzzing with Christmas morning anticipation. But the moment I stepped inside, that fizz of excitement began to deflate. The atmosphere was off. "Hey everyone," I announced, trying to project cheerfulness. Mom mumbled a distracted, "Hi." Dad grunted a non-committal acknowledgement, and my siblings were conspicuously absent. I could hear Colton's music pounding through the ceiling from his bedroom, and Vanessa was hunched over her phone at the dining room table, scrolling with a glazed-over expression. "Is everything okay?" I asked, feeling awkward standing in the entryway. "Yeah, fine," Mom said, still riveted by her phone screen. It didn't feel fine, but I pushed it aside. I wasn't going to let their strange mood kill my carefully orchestrated surprise. "I thought we could all have dinner together tonight," I said, forcing an upbeat tone. "I have something I'm excited to share with you guys afterwards." Vanessa rolled her eyes, her gaze never leaving her phone. "Does it take long?" "I have plans later." Colton bellowed something incomprehensible from upstairs, and Rachel, who was apparently home judging by her shoes by the door, didn't even bother emerging from her room. Dad sighed, closing the refrigerator with unnecessary force. "Fine. Let's just get it over with then." Part of me wanted to turn around, walk out the door, and drive away right then and there. But I'd already parked the car, already envisioned the perfect evening. I stayed. Dinner was a painfully silent affair. I tried to break the ice, thanking them for making time to be there. But before I could even begin hinting at my surprise, Colton lumbered downstairs, chewing a piece of bread. "Can I borrow your car tomorrow?" he asked, completely oblivious. "Mine's acting up again." I hesitated. "I need it for work in the morning, but maybe after." Vanessa cut me off, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Wow. So, you can bail us out of debt, but you can't even lend Colton your car? Such a big hero you are, Elliot." My head snapped up, my stomach churning. "Are you serious?" Rachel emerged from her room, arms crossed and glaring, as if I'd personally ruined her day. "Ugh," she sighed, making it clear that I was the problem. I honestly couldn't believe what was happening. "Seriously, what's going on?" "I came here to help," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Mom, who'd been silent since we sat down to dinner, finally spoke up. "Look, you know we're stressed, you're not helping the situation. If you're here to cause problems, maybe it's better if you just left." "Problems?" I had gone to such lengths for them. Dad mumbled something under his breath. "Just stop assuming you know everything. Just go." I was stunned. One after another, they started criticizing me. Even Grandma mumbled something I couldn't quite catch, but the disapproving look on her face was unmistakable. Something inside me just broke. I slammed my hands on the table, rattling the dishes. "Seriously? What is wrong with all of you?" I yelled. "I came here offering a gift, and this is the thanks I get? I see now that you all are far too immature to appreciate it." I stood up and walked out, and they all came after me. Finally, they stepped outside. That was when the expressions on their faces completely changed. Their smugness vanished, replaced by complete shock. Mom's jaw literally dropped. Dad stopped dead in his tracks, and Rachel looked like she'd seen a ghost. "This," I said, gesturing toward the car, my voice sharper than I intended, "was meant to be for you. I've been saving for years, just so that you could have a car that was safe and reliable." Rachel, naturally, had to be first to respond. "Just wait." "No." I cut her off, my voice firm. "All of you have made it clear how you actually feel about me. I'm just someone you have to rely on to clean up your messes. So, fine, but don't expect anything else from me ever again." The silence was palpable, hanging heavy in the air. I turned to leave, ready to finally be done. But then, out of nowhere, Grandma came outside, clutching her purse. "What are you doing?" Rachel asked, her expression totally confused. Grandma straightened her back and met Rachel's gaze. "I'm leaving with her," she announced, her voice steady as if she'd been planning this for a while. The family immediately erupted in chaos. Mom nearly passed out. Dad tried to catch her, and Rachel launched into a barrage of questions. "What do you mean you're leaving with her? You can't just leave." But Grandma wasn't budging. She turned to me, her eyes full of resolve. "You've always been the sensible one, sweetheart. I'm done with their craziness." She walked over to the car, opened the passenger door, and climbed in. I didn't even have time to think. I just got in the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away. I never looked back. The drive with Grandma beside me, after all my meticulous planning for the evening, was stiff and uncomfortable for what felt like an age. The car interior felt like a pressure chamber, and the only sound was the quiet thrum of the engine. My head was still swimming, replaying the disastrous events of the evening over and over, when Grandma's voice cut through the silence. "Elliot," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle but with an edge I hadn't heard before. "There's something I need to tell you. It might be best if you pulled over for this." The words hung there, a heavy weight in the small space between us. I glanced at her quickly, trying to decipher something from her expression, but her gaze was fixed straight ahead, her face an unreadable mask of calm. I didn't pull over. Honestly, I couldn't face another disappointment. I was already seething about how the night had spiraled out of control. My hands tightened on the steering wheel, and I forced myself to focus on the road ahead. "Just spit it out, whatever it is," I muttered, maybe a little sharper than I intended. She sighed, a small, exasperated sound, and shook her head slightly. "Stubborn. Just like your grandfather." That stopped me short. She rarely, if ever, mentioned Grandpa. He'd been gone for so long, and whenever his name surfaced, her eyes would glaze over with a familiar sadness, and she'd brush it off as if the subject was simply too painful to discuss. But this was different. There was a firmness in her gaze, a resolution I hadn't seen before. "You're not going to like this," she warned, her voice low. "Grandma," I said, exhaling hard. "After tonight, I honestly think I'm prepared for just about anything." She leaned back in her seat, her hands folded neatly in her lap with practiced grace, and finally, she said, "Your grandfather left me money when he passed. A substantial amount, more than you can possibly imagine. And I've been adding to it steadily over the years." I was completely thrown. "What? I thought you lived on Social Security. You always said it barely covered your basic expenses." "That's what I wanted everyone to think," she said, her voice surprisingly businesslike. "You've seen how your family behaves. Do you honestly think they'd leave me alone if they knew I was sitting on even a modest sum?" I let that sink in, the implications swirling in my mind. Grandma, the same woman who would scrimp and save, who refused to turn up the heating in the dead of winter to save a few dollars, had been deliberately concealing a small fortune from the entire family. "Just how much are we talking about?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She hesitated for a moment, then finally said, "Close to 7 figures. I nearly drove us into the opposite lane." "Are you actually serious right now? 7 figures and you've just been sitting on it this whole time?" She shot me a sharp, reproving look. "I am damn serious, Elliot. And yes, I've been safeguarding it because it wasn't intended for them. It was always meant for you." For me, that completely blindsided me. I'd spent my entire life feeling like the understudy in my own family drama, the one who cleaned up everyone else's messes but never really received anything beyond a perfunctory thank you. "Why me?" I asked, my voice softer now, barely audible. "Because you're the only one who's truly earned it," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "You've dedicated your entire life to giving to people who don't appreciate it, who actively undervalue you. Tonight was just another stark reminder of that. They'll drain you dry, take and take until there's absolutely nothing left." I simply refused to let that happen. I honestly didn't know how to respond. Part of me felt profoundly flattered, genuinely touched by her confidence in me, but I also felt deeply overwhelmed. So what exactly am I supposed to do with this money?" I asked, fumbling for some semblance of composure. "Whatever you want," she said, her eyes twinkling. "Invest it. Start your own business. Buy yourself something nice for once. But absolutely do not waste it on them." That last part stung. There was no getting away from it, but I completely understood the sentiment behind it. Still, it felt wrong. as though I was being asked to turn my back on my family entirely. When we finally pulled into the driveway at home, I parked the car and just sat there in stunned silence, trying desperately to process everything she just told me. Grandma noticed me staring blankly ahead and gave me a knowing, almost pitying look. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, well-worn notebook she'd shown me earlier in the week. Its frayed edges and faded cover looked touchingly out of place in her perfectly manicured hands. "Elliot," Grandma said softly, handing me the worn notebook, "this is yours now. Everything you need is in here. Forget about needing their approval." My eyes dropped to the notebook in my hands. The pages were filled with Grandma's precise handwriting, a roadmap of numbers, investment notes, and lawyer contacts. Holding it, feeling the weight of it, was the first real confirmation that Grandma actually meant what she'd been saying about trusting me. A knot tightened in my stomach as I flipped through the pages. Bank accounts, stocks, bonds, things I barely understood existed, let alone knew how to manage. "Grandma, I don't know if I can do this," I confessed, my voice barely a whisper. "This is a lot." She squeezed my shoulder, her grip surprisingly strong and steady. "You can do it, Elliot. You underestimate yourself. Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Don't waste it on people who don't deserve it, like your family. I know you have a good heart, but you see how they treat you. They'll drain you dry. This is for you, your future, your peace, not theirs." Her words resonated in my head the rest of the evening. After that, she got out of the car and went into the house, leaving me staring at the shiny new crossover sitting in the driveway. The car was supposed to be a gift, but now it felt like a glaring monument to the awfulness of the evening. I woke up the next morning to a phone buzzing incessantly. The screen was flooded with messages from my family, all of them having arrived overnight. Mom had sent 3 long, rambling texts about how I had embarrassed her. Vanessa posted a vague, passive-aggressive status on Facebook about some people needing to grow up, a post that was obviously about me. Colton was the worst, though. Just 2 simple words: "You're selfish." Grandma noticed my face fall as I scrolled through the messages. "Let me guess," she said, sitting down across from me with her morning coffee. "They're all blaming you?" "Pretty much," I said, tossing my phone onto the table. "Apparently, I'm the villain now." She calmly sipped her coffee, completely unfazed. "Let them stew. They'll get over it eventually." But as the day wore on, the calls began. First Mom, then Vanessa, and even Dad tried. I ignored every single one, but it was clear that they weren't going to let this go. By the afternoon, voicemails started piling up, each one angrier and more accusatory than the last. "So, you think you're too good for us now?" Mom's voice crackled through one of them. "After everything we've done for you, after all we've been through as a family, this is how you treat us?" I felt like screaming into a pillow. How was I the bad guy in all this? I had done everything I could to help them, always. And the one time I finally stood up for myself, they acted like I had committed some unforgivable betrayal. Later that evening, Vanessa showed up unexpectedly at my house. I opened the door to find her standing there on my doorstep. "Can we talk?" she demanded, not even waiting for me to answer before pushing past me and stepping inside. "What do you want?" I asked, crossing my arms defensively. She didn't bother with small talk. "You need to apologize to all of us." I let out a short laugh, more from disbelief than genuine amusement. "For what? For trying to help? For buying a car for people who don't even appreciate it? For finally saying no to your family?" Her face flushed red and she snapped. "You think you're better than us now just because you have some money saved up? Well, guess what, Elliot? Money doesn't make you a good person." I felt anger rising within me again, but before I could even form a coherent sentence, Grandma's voice cut through the tension. "Vanessa," she said, her tone sharp and unwavering, "you have no right to be here, let alone demand anything from Elliot. You've spent years taking advantage of his kindness, and now you're upset because he's finally learned to stand up for himself." Vanessa looked momentarily stunned. "Grandma, that's not—" "Save it," Grandma said, standing up straighter. I've had enough of your nonsense. Get out of this house and don't come back until you've learned how to treat people with respect." The words echoed in the sudden silence after Vanessa's dramatic exit. I watched her go, the slam of the door vibrating through me. My grandmother's declaration hung in the air. "Grandma, you didn't have to do that," I managed, feeling a mix of gratitude and apprehension. "Yes, I did," she replied firmly, settling back into her chair. "It's time they understood they can't treat you that way." A warmth spread through me, a feeling I hadn't experienced in ages, someone truly having my back. The next day, I resolved to ignore their inevitable onslaught of calls. It started predictably. Guilt trips from Mom, Vanessa's veiled insults masked as concern, Colton's incessant whining about his car, and Dad's attempts to play the neutral mediator. He called repeatedly, but I let it go to voicemail. Slowly, the tone shifted. Upset turned to anger. "Elliot, you're being ridiculous," Mom texted. "Family is family. We've been through so much together. And now you're just throwing it all away like we mean nothing to you." Ignoring it was harder than I anticipated. Each notification was a fresh reminder of their complete lack of understanding. I felt trapped. Grandma, however, seemed completely unfazed. She caught me pacing the kitchen, phone clutched in my hand, and arched a brow. "Still letting them get to you, huh? They're relentless," I said, finally throwing my phone onto the counter. She calmly sipped her coffee. "Let them be. They'll scream and cry and throw tantrums, but eventually they'll realize they can't control you anymore." But they didn't give up, not even after my ignoring them seemed to work. Then came the night that altered everything. Grandma suggested we get out of the house, just for a little while. We found ourselves at a quiet cafe, where she insisted on treating me to coffee and pie, saying we both deserved a break. For a brief, precious hour, we talked and laughed, enjoying a rare moment of peace away from the constant family turmoil. But as we pulled into the driveway back at the house, my heart sank. Vanessa's car, Colton's truck, and my parents' sedan were all parked haphazardly, blocking everything. "They really don't know when to quit," Grandma muttered, shaking her head. The moment we walked through the front door, the tension hit me like a physical blow, and the ambush began. "This has gone far enough," Dad announced, standing in the center of the living room like he was about to deliver a sentence. "We're taking Grandma home." Trying to maintain some semblance of composure, I put my keys on the counter. "She's not going anywhere, Dad. She's made her decision." Mom stepped forward, her face etched with frustration. "She's confused, Elliot. She's old. She doesn't know what's best for her anymore." Before I could even respond, Vanessa dramatically brandished a piece of paper. "This is a power of attorney form. We've already spoken to a lawyer. If Grandma's not in her right mind, we're taking control of her finances and decisions." Something inside me snapped. My fists clenched, and my voice came out low and tight. "You're not taking anything from her." Grandma stepped forward, her voice filled with strength. "You think I don't know what you're up to?" she asked, her voice clear and strong. "I've been dealing with your nonsense for decades. Let me tell you something, you're not taking control of anything. I've already spoken to my lawyer, and everything I have is going to Elliot. Every last penny. There's nothing you can do about it." The room exploded. Vanessa started ranting about fairness. Colton accused Grandma of being manipulated, and even Mom and Dad looked shocked, as if they couldn't believe she'd been so decisive. The room's simmering tension abruptly solidified with Vanessa's pointed declaration. "If you don't give us what we want, I'm going to expose your perfect little family charade to Elliot." A chill ran through me, silencing everyone. I swung around to face her, my pulse hammering in my ears. What on earth is she going on about now? I thought, my stomach churning. My father's voice, usually booming, was now a low, cautionary rumble as he pleaded, "Vanessa, please, don't." She rounded on him with a venomous snap. "Why shouldn't I? He has every right to know." "Know what?" I demanded, the volume of my voice rising in tandem with my panic. Vanessa folded her arms, fixing Dad with a hateful glare. He isn't his biological father, is he? Mom had an affair way before he was born, and you just went along with it and decided to pretend like it never happened, raising him as if he was your own. Her words slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. I felt like I couldn't breathe, a crushing weight on my chest, and for a dizzying moment, I thought I might actually faint. That's enough, Vanessa. My father finally roared, his face flushed crimson. No, it's not enough. I cried, my voice trembling uncontrollably. Is it true? Did you lie to me my whole life? His eyes darted nervously to Mom, who had begun to cry silent, heartbroken tears. Then, with a barely perceptible nod, he confirmed my worst fear. Yes, it's true, he admitted weakly. But that doesn't change anything between us. I raised you as my own. You are my son. I stumbled backward, reeling, the world spinning around me. I felt as if the very foundation of my existence had crumbled beneath my feet. You lied to me? I choked out, my voice barely audible. We didn't want to hurt you. Elliot, Mom sobbed, her face buried in her hands. We thought we were doing what was best for you. I just shook my head in disbelief, my hands trembling as I tried to move forward toward the living room. You didn't do it for me? I spat out, rage building with every word. You did it because it was easier for all of you to keep quiet. Vanessa smirked smugly, but thankfully, Grandma wasn't having any of it. She moved to my side, placing a steadying hand on my arm. You don't owe them anything, Elliot, she stated firmly, her voice ringing with conviction. Especially not after keeping something like this from you for so long. I nodded slowly, taking a deep, ragged breath before turning back to face them all. All of you have crossed the line, and I'm done with it all. Just get out of my house. Every single one of you. Mom gasped as if I had struck her. Elliot, wait. Please, don't do this. No, I interrupted, my voice now calm and steady, albeit icy cold. You lied to me, manipulated me, and now you're even trying to control Grandma. You don't get to stay here and inflict your guilt on everyone. Leave now. For a split second, they all stood there, frozen in shock, looking almost comical in their surprise. Vanessa was the first to regain her composure, her smug expression quickly replaced by one of indignation. You can't just throw us out on the street like this. Oh, watch me, I retorted, crossing my arms defiantly. The door's right over there. Dad took a step forward, his face pleading as if he wanted to argue. But Grandma raised her hand to stop him. Don't bother, Robert. Elliot's right. You all need to leave now. With a series of muttered protests and resentful glares shot in my direction, they began gathering their belongings and shuffling towards the exit. Dad paused in the doorway, looking utterly defeated. Elliot, don't do this. Don't let this tear us all apart. I just stared him down, my expression unyielding. You already did that when you lied to me for my entire life. I slammed the door shut behind them and leaned against it, feeling the full weight of the confrontation crash down on me. Grandma offered me a small, sad smile. I'm proud of you, Elliot, she said softly. The next few days passed by in a disorienting haze. I could barely manage to eat or sleep, my mind endlessly replaying the events of that night and struggling to process everything I had learned. Grandma tried her best to comfort me, but there was little she could say that would truly ease the pain. But one thing was becoming increasingly clear in my mind. I was done. Done with their lies, their manipulations, and their incessant demands. For the first time in my life, I felt free. Or, at least, that's what I desperately tried to convince myself of in the days that followed. Freedom was supposed to feel freeing. Instead, I felt like I'd been flayed, every protective layer peeled away, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. The life I thought I knew, the family I thought I understood, was suddenly unrecognizable. Grandma and I found a rhythm, a quiet cadence to our days. I threw myself into projects, reorganizing every closet, scrubbing every surface. When the work was done, I'd lose myself in old crime dramas, hours melting away as I tried to outsmart fictional killers. But no matter how busy I kept, A hollowness echoed inside me, a persistent emptiness that refused to be filled. Then, about a week later, a letter arrived. The envelope was unremarkable, plain white, with no return address. My name was scrawled across the front in Dad's unmistakable, messy handwriting. My first impulse was to toss it straight into the trash. After everything they had the nerve to reach out, I didn't owe them a single thing. But curiosity, or maybe it was something darker, some twisted hope for resolution, made me tear it open. A single sheet of paper was folded inside. The message was brief. There's something you need to know. Come to the house on Sunday at 3 p.m. Bring Grandma. I stared at those words, the paper trembling in my hand. What could possibly be left to say? What secrets could they still be hiding? A part of me, the sensible part, wanted to ignore it completely, pretend the letter never arrived. But another part, a stubborn, foolish part that still clung to the idea of family, of some kind of understanding, wouldn't let it go. I showed Grandma the letter. She looked at it, her brow furrowed, but she didn't seem surprised. They've never been good at letting things rest, she said, her voice low. Do you think I should go? I asked, needing her perspective, her strength. That's your decision, Elliot, she replied, her eyes meeting mine. But if you decide to go, I'm going with you. I'm not letting them corner you alone. Sunday felt heavy, the weight of expectation pressing down on me. The drive to the house was suffocating. Grandma sat beside me in the passenger seat, silent, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. She didn't say much, but I could feel her tension, sense the turmoil swirling beneath her calm exterior. We pulled into the driveway. It was empty, eerily so. No cars, no signs of life, just the silent, brooding house. The windows were dark, the curtains drawn, like eyes closed against the world. I knocked on the door, the sound echoing in the unsettling quiet. No answer. Grandma tried calling Dad's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. We waited on the porch, the afternoon sun beating down on us, for over an hour. No one came. Maybe it's for the best, Grandma said finally, her voice weary. I nodded, but something felt off, wrong. Why send the letter if they weren't going to be there? The days that followed were unsettlingly quiet. No calls, no texts, no cryptic posts on Facebook. It was like the entire family had collectively gone underground, a voluntary exile from my life. Relief should have been my dominant emotion, but instead, I felt a gnawing unease, a sense of impending doom. Then, one evening, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Against my better judgment, fueled by a strange mix of apprehension and morbid curiosity, I answered. Elliot, it's Rachel, a soft voice said. Rachel, my youngest sister. Hearing from her was completely unexpected. She always avoided family conflict, preferring to remain a silent observer, a neutral party. Hey, I said cautiously, my guard instantly up. What's up? There was a long pause on her end, a hesitation that spoke volumes, before she finally said, I wanted to apologize for everything. Her words caught me completely off guard, a punch to the gut I didn't see coming. Why now? I asked, suspicious. Because it's all falling apart? She said quietly, her voice laced with despair. Mom and Dad are fighting nonstop. Vanessa's furious that Grandma's with you. Colton's still trying to figure out how to get what he thinks he's owed. And me? I'm just tired of it. So tired. I didn't know what to say. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy with unspoken words, with years of resentment and regret. Part of me wanted to forgive her, to believe her sincerity. She had always been different from the others, less cruel, more empathetic. But another part, the cynical part, the part that had been hurt too many times, couldn't help but wonder if this was just another manipulation, another attempt to use me. I don't know what to say, I admitted, my voice barely a whisper. You don't have to say anything, she said, her voice cracking. I just wanted you to know that not all of us think you're the villain in this story. She paused for a moment, then said, You've always done so much for this family, Elliot, and they've used you for it over and over again. They'll never admit it, but I've seen it. They expect you to fix everything, to take on the burden, and then they turn around and treat you like you're the problem. It's not fair. Her honesty, her unexpected vulnerability, hit me harder than I expected. A tidal wave of emotions threatening to drown me. I leaned back against the kitchen counter, the weight of her words pressing against me. Why this now, Rachel? I managed to ask, the question barely audible. Because it's been eating at me, she said, her voice thick with a regret I hadn't expected. For years, I've watched them, seen how they treated you, and I didn't say anything. Part of me felt like it wasn't my place, or maybe I was just too afraid to rock the boat. But now, seeing what they're doing, especially to Grandma, it's just sickening. You don't deserve any of this, Elle. You never have. I swallowed hard, fighting back the emotions that threatened to spill over. Thanks, Rach. Truly. That means more than you know. A pause stretched between us, filled with unspoken words. I just wanted you to know you're not alone in this. Don't let them drag you back into their drama. I won't, I replied, my voice surprisingly firm. Not this time. Her words echoed in my head long after the call ended, planting a seed of something like hope. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for some kind of peace, and honestly, that was all I craved at that moment. A week later, another letter arrived, this time with a lawyer's letterhead. It was a formal notice concerning Grandpa's estate, some jargon about a final review of assets. It didn't make any sense. Grandpa had passed years ago, and as far as I knew, everything had been settled. I showed the letter to Grandma, and a deep frown etched itself onto her face. This is them, she said, her voice low. They're digging for anything they can use against us. Despite her warning, I knew I had to investigate. The next day, I called the lawyer listed on the notice and explained my confusion. The information I received left me completely stunned. Apparently, Grandpa had established a secondary trust fund, completely separate from the assets Grandma had been managing. It wasn't a fortune, but it was substantial enough to cause problems. And here's the kicker. The trust wasn't meant for the family at all. It was specifically designated for me. I sat there, speechless, as the lawyer explained the terms. Grandpa had set it up shortly before he died, with explicit instructions that it remain untouched until I turned 30. Why didn't anyone ever tell me about this? I finally managed to ask. The family was notified when the trust was created, the lawyer said, but I was instructed not to contact you directly until the specified time arrived. I hung up, my mind whirling. All this time, they knew about the trust. They knew Grandpa had left something specifically for me, and they kept it hidden. When I told Grandma, she simply nodded, without any surprise. They've always been good at keeping things from you, especially when it doesn't benefit them, she said, a hint of bitterness in her voice. The next contact I had with the family was Vanessa calling to ask if I had come to my senses about Grandma's money. I didn't mention the trust. I couldn't bring myself to deal with that explosion just yet. Instead, I finally said everything I'd been keeping bottled up since this whole mess started. You know what, Vanessa? I'm done. Done with the lies, the manipulation, and the constant